Hi Spartans. Last week we started diving into the poetry project and thinking about brainstorming ideas for your poetry portfolio for your partner. Today we're going to dive into the first final product of this project, which is a poetry analysis task. In 2 weeks, on April 4th, you will be required to write a full essay analyzing the theme in one poem in one block period, that's 90 minutes. In order to prepare us for that, we're going to learn some strategies today on how to figure out the theme. One strategy we're going to use during this project is called twist. This is our introduction to twist. What is twist? Twist is a strategy to analyze how the theme is developed in a poem. Twist has 5 parts. These are 5 poetic devices or literary devices that we can look into to figure out an author's message. The first one is tone. When you think about tone, I want you to think, what is the speaker's attitude towards the subject? How do they feel about it? Tone is often about feeling words. There's also word choice. You want to think which words show strong emotions or key ideas. You all did a really nice job with this in the literary analysis essay project, so I want you to dive into the poems we read as well to think about how the word choice represents the author's and the writer's messages. You can also look at imagery. Think about what images, symbols, descriptions, or objects express the poem's meaning. If you think back to when we studied A Raisin in the Sun in the fall, we looked a lot at symbols, such as the plant. Some people looked at a rainbow as a symbol. These are the types of symbols you want to look for in your poem as well, or general descriptions that somehow express meaning. There's also style. I want you to think, how does the writer use form and structure to express his or her ideas? You might look at the number of lines in the poem, the number of stanzas, how the lines break, or even the important punctuation. How do those contribute to the meaning? The first 4 parts of twist, tone, word choice, imagery, and style, will give you information and possible evidence to figure out the last part of twist. That's the theme. Thinking about what is the poet's universal message. We've studied theme many times this year, and you've passed the Theme 2 playlist, so my expectation is that you understand how to write a theme and how to figure out how it's developed. Let's look at an example. This is a poem by Tupac Shakur. It's called The Rose That Grew from Concrete. As we read poetry, we often read it multiple times. The first time is always just to figure out what is it about. I'm going to read the poem out loud one time, and I want you to think, what is this about? The rose that grew from concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law is wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete, when no one else ever cared. So after my first read, I'm going to pause for a second and think to myself, what is this poem about? It seems like kind of an impossible situation. There's a flower growing out of like the street, like the concrete. Somehow the flower is walking, but literally a flower is growing out of nothing. Okay, now I understand what the poem is about. Now I want to read a second time for twist, trying to dig in what is the message behind this poem. Here's one way you could use twist. You want to mark up the text using the different parts of twist, tone, word choice, imagery, and style. And this could be an annotation guide for you. Let me walk you through my thinking. First, let's think about tone. Tone is the speaker's feeling towards the subject. I noticed a bunch of words that kind of mark a tone here. The idea of growing. Growing gives off feelings of possibility, potential. Maybe there's a change that will happen, maybe there's some learning. What also stood out to me is this idea of belief versus disbelief. The rose seemed to believe in itself because it had all these dreams and hopes. It seemed determined to grow regardless it was in concrete, even though roses literally cannot do that. And the speaker seems kind of in disbelief about it because they said, funny it seems. They weren't expecting that to happen. Even at the end, they were so unexpecting it happened that they said, more power to the rose. This reminded me of the idea of like hail to the chief, which when you're talking about like a government leader or like a president, sometimes you say that because you respect them so much. So there's a tone that's of putting both belief and disbelief and doubt next to each other. The words that stood out to me are the following. I color-coded these as blue. This idea of like the impossible, because there's concrete and there's a rose. Obviously roses need like soil, they need water, they need light, but concrete doesn't have those things. Dreams stood out to me a lot. I wondered, why do the dreams help? And then this last line stood out in terms of the words a lot. No one else ever cared. Apparently no one believed in this plant. No one believed in this flower. It was really lonely. They had no faith. So again, we come back to the idea of like belief and disbelief. Then we look at the imagery. Imagery is huge in this poem because it's all about two symbols, the rose and the concrete. If I think about the rose, I think specifically it's beautiful. That's what roses are. They often symbolize like love. They're alive. Concrete is the exact opposite. It's part of the city. It's impermeable, meaning no one can penetrate it. It also has no nutrients in it. All plants need nutrients, so somehow this thing is growing without any nutrients. Also, a flower doesn't have feet. I drew this out to help myself better understand the imagery. So here's my rose. It's in the concrete. Somehow, first it grew without anything, and then suddenly it's like walking away. That leads me to think like somehow the rose becomes free of the concrete. It feels relief because it's breathing fresh air finally, and it's getting its nutrients. It feels rejuvenated. Then I started diving into like the style. Style, you want to look at the punctuation, the line breaks, the number of stanzas. This poem just has one stanza. Every 2 lines is one full sentence because it ends with some kind of end punctuation. There's a question at the beginning. There are periods at the rest. I did wonder why it started with a question. And then I noticed there was also some alliteration, meaning similar sounds repeated. The second line says, from a crack in the concrete. There's a repeated C there, just trying to make that stand out to us. I just wondered why. Also at the end, long live. It brings our attention right there as a reader because we're hearing the same sounds over and over. So twist helped me figure out a bunch of different things to add to my annotations, which is a bunch of potential evidence that I now have to put together in a universal message. That's the last T in twist. Here's the theme that I figured out. Theme. Determination and hope can help people accomplish whatever they want despite any obstacles. Here's some of my evidence I had for that. One line said, proving nature's law is wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. The rose did the unthinkable. It started walking. Even though it had no way of doing that according to nature, it did it anyway. If you look at the second line, funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Again, we have this idea of the unbelievable happened. Through dreaming, hope, and determination, it became rejuvenated. It was able to do what it wanted, and it was finally free. Which connects back to the idea that it can accomplish whatever it wants, as long as it has determination. So that was one example of how to use twist. You will use twist many times in this project, and you're about to independently apply it today. Before we apply it, we have to capture our thinking to make it really clear. On your handout, write down the following things. 3 things you learned about twist, 2 questions you have about twist, and 1 strategy you will use today as you analyze a poem with twist. You have the remaining time in the do now to complete your handout. Feel free to rewind this video if it helps you. I'm excited to see your analysis today.